All right, so we're back and looking at our last function, exponentials. All right, and we're going to be graphing and writing those equations. And just like our prior three functions, we're going to begin with an exploration in Desmos. All right, and so what I want to do real quick is just once again help you understand how to type in exponents. That way you can input everything correctly and not feel frustrated. So if I want to type in y equals 2 to the x, all right, so I want to go down here, all right. So I'm going to type y equals 2, and now instead of using the squared key, I'm going to use this key. And so notice that's your exponent key, A, and it puts that B right there. That's like raising it in here, and I can, to the exponent, I can put my x in. So there's y equals 2 to the x. All right, so that's how you do that problem. Now notice, if I just scroll down a little bit here, you have y equals 1/2 x. So let me talk about that one as well. All right, and you can just do 1/2 as 1 divided by 2, right? So I can go 1, and notice when I do divided by, it gives me the 2 right there into the denominator. Now the trick is you have to arrow out, all right, that denominator like that, okay? And then you can do this and to the x like that. Now what I suggest is actually putting parentheses in, all right, just to be safe, just like I did in number 2 when you see it printed. So I would actually probably type it like this. Open that parenthesis, and then do 1 divided by 2 like that. Arrow out, close that parenthesis, and now put that exponent on the outside. And it's just a little safer that way. Make sure that you raise everything to the power of x. So here's what I'd like you to do. All right, so let me click Desmos out of the way here so you can see the paper. All right, so I want you to do problems 1 to 4. All right, answer the questions here. Flip it over. All right, do questions 5 to 8. Answer those 2 questions. All right, and once you finish that, turn the video back on. We'll go through this and see how you did. All right, so let me show you what I have here and see if you agree with the work. All right, so when we look at y equals 2 to the x, we get this graph that goes up, all right, from left to right. Notice it gets really close to the x-axis but never really hits the x-axis. Same thing with y equals 1/2 to the x. The only difference is now it's coming from the opposite direction. So instead of going up, it's coming down, and it gets really close to the x-axis but never quite touches it. All right, so y equals 3 to the x. Once again, we kind of get this lazy L kind of shape here. All right, lazy L. All right, gets really close to the x-axis but never quite touches it. Y equals 1/3 to the x. All right, just the other direction. Now that tail, and we talk about this as the tail of the exponential, right? Okay, so the tail is on the right side here. The tail is on the left side here. All right, so now, what does that b value do? Well, hopefully you notice that in 1 and 3 here, our b value is bigger than 1. And if our b value is bigger than 1, greater than 1, we're going to go uphill. All right, so we're going to go uphill. If b is less than 1, and I should put in a little bit more, a little bit of a note here, is that b is always greater than 0. It's always, oh, you guys can't see that. Wrote it in. Let me move it up for you. All right, so b is always greater than 0. So when we're saying less than 1, we mean like 0.5 or 1/2 or 1/3 or 1/4 or 0.58. All right, but never a negative base. All right, so this b value will never be negative. It will always be a positive number. So if that b value is between 0 and 1, all right, like 1/2 and 1/3, then we get an exponential graph that goes downhill. All right, so that's the first thing. So we always want to look at that b value. If it's bigger than 1, we know our graph's going to go uphill. If it's between 0 and 1, we know it's going to go downhill. All right, so flip it over, and let's look at what you have here. So notice we have 2 to the x plus 2. Our b value is more than 1, so it's going uphill. But now notice, now it's been raised, right? It's gone up a little bit. Notice the tail of the graph gets really close to 2, but never quite touches it. Okay, y equals 2 to the x minus 1. Once again, it's greater than 1. It's going uphill. But notice now the tail is really close to -3. 2 to the x minus 5, going uphill, and once again that tail is really close to -5. All right, 2 to the x plus 1, going uphill, and that tail is really, really close to positive 1. Now, what you may have noticed is that this k-value has the same effect on our graph. It moves it up and down, just like the k-value does for our absolute value, all right, our quadratic graph. It moves it up and down. So what do we notice here? All right, the tail of the graph gets really close to the line y equals k. Now, we're going to refer to this sometimes as the floor of the graph, right, the floor. All right, so it's kind of sitting on -5 here. It's setting on 1, right? That's kind of the floor. So it's going to get really close to that, but never quite touch it. All right, now you were supposed to go back to problems 5 to 8 and darken that y-intercept of each graph. And then how much above the tail of the graph is that y-intercept? So if we go back and look, I'm going to just darken these in real quick here, like we were asked to do. All right, and so notice, my tail gets really close to 0, my y-intercept is 1 above. My tail gets really close to 0, my y-intercept is 1 above. My tail gets really close to 0, my y-intercept is 1 above. My tail gets really close to 0, my y-intercept is 1 above. All right, now let's look over here. Now our floor, right, or asymptote is the formal term, all right, has changed. Now notice my tail gets really close to 2, right? We see that plus 2 in the equation here. My y-intercept is still 1 above that floor, all right? Same thing here. My floor is -3. My tail of my graph gets really close to -3, and that y-intercept is 1 above. All right, same thing here. My floor is -5, right? That we can see that tail gets really close to -5. That y-intercept is 1 above. The floor is 1 this time, right? My tail gets really close to 1. I go back up here. My y-intercept is 1. So for most of the things that we're going to work with right now, all right, notice this a value sitting out front. We're really going to work with everything right now, which is going to be 1. So most of our equations are going to just be this guy, all right, b to the x plus k. And as long as we're in the form b to the x plus k, then, all right, our y-intercept will always be 1 above that k value, 1 value above the floor. All right, my friends, that wraps up our introduction to graphing and writing equations of exponential. We'll get into a little bit more depth and detail when I see you in class. Have a great time tonight. See ya.